Hello, everyone, and welcome to Why Wasn't It Better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And your co-host, Anton Paras.
And we have a return guest, a favorite of the podcast, Garret Ohringer. Welcome back.
A favorite by whom? You two or the listeners? The sponsors, hopefully?
By
Everyone
popular demand.
involved.
Yeah.
This is my 5th episode. I'm waiting for my jacket like SNL, to be honest.
We have something in the works. Yeah,
You're like a high five and a slap on the back.
It's the equivalent to one of
some
those.
of our guest gifts.
Now, Garrett, what we're doing for the 5-timers is like a crown like they do at Burger King.
I hope it's made out of cardboard too, like Burger King too. Wait, here's a fun story. My head is so big, and it was as a kid too. The crown never even fit on me like past the age of like 7.
Oh.
Listeners, sup.
Well, Garrett, welcome back. Yeah, your very 5th appearance.
Yes, I'm very excited. I'm so excited to talk about this movie.
Yeah, I mean, you were sold to me initially as a Marvel comic expert, and I quickly discovered that your expertise extend to so many other things just besides Marvel.
I'd like to say, I'm a man with a lot of surprises too. You think you know me, but then I'm just like an onion. You peel the layers back. There's just so much more rich, flavorful depth to me.
I was gonna say last time we were here, Garrett, you were able, you gifted us your presents for Bond. So that was excellent to have you on a non-superhero film and discuss the Tabasco of it all.
And now we're going from Tabasco to tobacco and to talk about real superheroes, which are whistleblowers and people who stand for truth and justice.
They do. At least
Pat,
two
tell me
people
that is
do
not
in
a
this
good
movie.
transition right there.
I
should like
great
transitions. You're welcome. Pat on the back.
This is going to be a good one. It's the 25th anniversary of The Insider, which is, I would think, one of the more obscure movies that we've covered on this podcast so far. I feel like if you're a movie buff, you know this film. If you're a Michael Mann fan, you of course know this film. Of all the films that we've covered on the podcast so far, Anton, this is one of the ones that I had to explain the most to people. I get a lot of questions from friends and listeners. Like when we release the lineup at the beginning of every season, a lot of people ask me what The Insider was. And it shouldn't be obscure, but it is. It was sort of a big deal when it came out, which we'll get into, but it does not have the legacy that it deserves. And we're going to shed light on that today.
Until we get buried by Big Tobacco, because they want this movie to disappear too.
They may, via tortious interference.
Dude, tortious interference is such a great thing that I just want to include in like my daily vernacular. Like, how can I include that in a meeting after someone oversteps their bounds or like responds to an email before like I did when I'm supposed to? Like, I'm going to say that's tortious interference.
What does Pacino say? It sounds like a disease caught by a radio.
I mean, Al Pacino definitely had tortious interference in the 80s.
You know what else Al Pacino had? How many packs of cigarettes do you think he smoked in his life?
God. That's where all the budget went, which I'm sure we'll get into.
I hope Pacino had quit by this point in his life, because he was like 50s in here, early 50s, mid 50s?
Probably around there, yeah.
Yeah, usually if you don't quit by then, it's like, why bother? But
he seems like someone who smokes like only like Marlboro Reds or like,
100%, yeah.
Spirits, like something gross. Like if you gave him a Parliament, he'd be like, what the hell is this? Like girly stuff. And you'd be like, whoa, wow. Like, hey, sorry, man.
That has light on the box. I don't do that. Marlboro Reds, no thanks. Lucky Strike and nothing.
Yeah, Lucky Strike.
Oh, by the way, Garrett, what'd you think of Twisters before we start?
Oh, Twisters? I haven't listened to your episode yet, which I need to. I'm sorry. It like just dropped yesterday at the time of recording
it's okay.
this. I'm a big fan of it. Personally, I love watching hot people be hot in movies and big budget effects actually looking like the budget that was spent on it. So all in all, I give it 3.5 Twisters out of 5.
What does that translate to on the Fujita scale?
I mean, let me tell you, I was feeling like, what is it, E5? What do they say it again? What's the
finger of God?
Yeah, the finger of God. The finger of God was definitely up inside me, if you know what I mean.
F5.
Yeah, F5. I was F5. Like when Glenn Powell, when he walked out of the house with that cowboy hat on in the rain and a white shirt. That
did look like he was in a Levi Jeans music video.
Or
a Levi
did.
Jeans commercial.
Yeah, singing like something like, I love my truck and I love my wife and I love Daisy Edgar Jones tonight.
Listeners, if you're curious, that's exactly how I look when I walk out in the rain, walk towards my Ford F-150.
Oh my God, Anton, oh my gosh. You make Glenn Powell look like nothing.
I'm definitely not convinced that Glenn Powell was made in a laboratory.
Oh my God. Hey, look, Army Hammer 8 people, so Glenn Powell could run.
Yeesh.
Yeah. Sorry, listeners, if you are on the Army Hammer Hive.
I don't think anyone is at this point.
I don't think you'd want to be.
Army Hammer is.
I just realized we dated this episode too, because this episode is going to come out like literally months after Twisters.
Well, you know what?
Well.
Cool.
That's
Well,
the
we'll
magic of
remind
editing.
people.
You can do what you want.
Yeah, I'll leave it in. Anyway, The Insider. After seeking the expertise of former Big Tobacco executive Jeffrey Wigand, 60 Minutes producer Lowell Bergman suspects a story lies behind Wigand's reluctance to speak. As Bergman persuades Wigand to share his knowledge of industry secrets, the two must contend with the courts and the corporations that stand between them and exposing the truth. All the while, Wigand must struggle to maintain his family life amidst lawsuits and death threats. The Insider was released on November 5th, 1999, by Touchstone Pictures, Spyglass Entertainment, and Forward Pass. Directed by Michael Mann. Screenplay by Michael Mann and Eric Roth, based on the Vanity Fair article The Man Who Knew Too Much by Marie Brenner. Starring Russell Crowe, Al Pacino, Christopher Plummer, Diane Venora, Philip Baker Hall, Lindsay Krause, Debbie Mazar, Stephen Tobolowsky, Bruce McGill, and Gina Gershon. The budget somehow ranged from $68 to $90 million, adjusted for inflation, that is $124 to $164 million. And the box office was only $60 million. That is $109 million adjusted for inflation. So total bomb. Why was this movie chosen? Well, we sort of already explained it. This is the 25th anniversary of it coming up. And I wanted to cover this for a variety of reasons. Number one being, this is my favorite Michael Mann film. While I will acknowledge Heat is his best film and probably his most entertaining film, I always gravitated towards this for a number of reasons that we're going to discuss. But overall, I'm a Michael Mann fan. I like his work, or I like most of his work, I should say. I really like Thief. I love Collateral. I even like Miami Vice, which a lot of people will not go to bat for, although it has found its footing over the years. And that's why I chose it. But Garret, as the guest, you jumped at this when I offered it to you. So why The Insider?
Like you, I'm a big Michael Mann stan. Ooh, there you go. That's what they should call like the Michael Mann fans. Oh, that also works too. All right. Anyway, digressions aside, over here, I think this is also just one of Michael Mann's best. And like you said, just like a movie almost like forgotten by time. I feel like the 90s in general have a lot of these big budget movies that, maybe didn't do well critically or commercially and just get lost to time. Obviously, this movie did great critically. And I just love all the themes that it explores. It's very classic Mann in that there's men who are good at their jobs and almost get too sunk into their jobs that it destroys everything outside of themselves, whether it be their families, their psyches, their professions. And I feel like these characters in this article was honestly just a perfect screenplay for Mann to do too. Like you said, Pat, it's tense, it's thrilling, it covers, just something that's well worn at the time in the 90s, which was kind of the panic about tobacco, which I do think is very inherently interesting. And yeah, like I said, it's Pacino, it's Russell Crowe, like right as his star is about to hit its apex too. And it just checks all of the boxes of everything Michael Mann for me, outside of, gross murder, which tends to be a theme, if you want to call it recurring theme in Mann films. But overall, just a great film forgotten to time that I'm more than happy to discuss. So glad to be here for it.
Anton.
I actually have no history with this film. I am among the group of people that Patrick mentioned when he said, people question, what is that film, The Insider? So when you told me, Pat, that this is, that you love this Russell Crowe, Al Pacino film, and that it's one that I'm going to probably put among my list of favorite films, well, you're not wrong. This is a great film, and I'm excited to talk about it today with that fresh lens.
Had you heard of it?
I had heard of it, yes. And knowing this, that it didn't really win at the Academy Awards nor many big awards. That
it got 7 Academy Award nominations: picture, director, actor, screenplay, I think cinematography, sound, and editing. Shutout, which we'll talk about, the 1999 Oscars. Wild. But the fascinating thing about it for me is this is really the only film Michael Mann has ever done that even got Oscar attention.
This was like the movie where I think the Academy finally treated him as a serious filmmaker. If his 3-hour cop epic wasn't enough for them, or, Last of the Mohicans, or Thief, or Manhunter. Yeah, I could keep going on and on. But I feel like this was the movie that like made the Academy almost like take him seriously. But let's be honest, this movie is like pure, not Oscars fodder, but it like checks the Oscar boxes.
It definitely does. Yeah, he has a strange relationship with the Academy. Prior to this, I don't know if they just didn't like him or he didn't campaign for it, but like, so running it back, right? No Oscar nominations, which is just baffling. But Last of the Mohicans actually won for sound, but then you'd think about the obvious ones. You're like, okay, it wasn't nominated for cinematography. It wasn't nominated for score. Daniel Day-Lewis wasn't nominated. It's like, how's that possible? I don't know. That's probably a topic of a whole nother podcast. But then after The Insider, Ali got a couple acting nominations. Collateral, Jamie Foxx was nominated. I think it was nominated for a technical category, but that's really it. I mean, ever since then, all of his work just either gets ignored by the Academy, doesn't make money at the box office, or both.
The cool thing is, though, he's still getting 80 million budgets in his age to make whatever he wants. And for that, I am thankful.
Are we all looking forward to Heat 2?
Heat 2?
I'm pretty excited. Who's distributing that one?
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
No.
I hope it's
Michael Mann.
I really hope it's Disney
too.
He had a lot of distribution problems with Ferrari.
I mean, look,
I'm kind of curious what happens.
Disney distributed The Insider. Come on, Disney, get back on the man horse and let's go.
Into it.
Disney wouldn't do this now. No chance.
No. They'll be like, it's under the 20th Century Studios banner that we're just casting off to the side.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect for Heat 2. I don't expect it to be good. Just anytime you mess with a legacy IP like that.
The rumor is that I read is that it's Austin Butler for the Chris Hurlis character, aka the Val Kilmer character, and I'm like, that would be pretty cool casting to me.
That would work.
And I think it's Adam Driver as Neil McCauley, the young Neil McCauley.
That won't work. And I like Adam Driver. I do. I really do. I think he's a really good actor. But do you see him playing young De Niro? I do not.
You don't see him playing young De Niro? I have no... See, I can't even do an impression. I'm like Adam
just
Driver.
Wait till we talk about Ferrari, my friend. Like, yes, people like to drive my cars.
Oh, yes. I mean, it doesn't hold a candle to Shailene Woodley's accent, but that's a story for another podcast. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, listeners can expect to hear that episode next season. Yeah, I didn't see this when it came out. Obviously, this was let's just say in 1999. This was not a movie that was on 11-year-old Pat's radar. My dad rented it probably about a year later. By that point, when I saw this on video, this was around the time that Gladiator came out. So Russell Crowe, by that point, that's when his star really exploded. So that's how I saw this movie, and I appreciated it at 12 years old. But there's a lot of stuff in here. This is just not a movie for kids. And over time, as I've watched it more and more, I think it's aged like wine. Every time I see it, I like it more.
I agree. Definitely not a movie for kids. 9-year-old me was definitely not watching it. And let's just be honest, when you talk about the premise, just selling this in, it's like, oh, it's a movie about a segment from 60 Minutes. Like, that is the most boring thing you could probably say to a child to get them to watch a movie, to be honest.
Yes.
If you sell it like that.
Well, yeah, but let's just be honest. That is kind of put this movie into one sentence of, oh, what's it about?
I have a note on that in the production history because Michael Mann had trouble selling it too.
Wow, again, I'm on fire with the segues.
Yeah, I know you do your research, Garrett. Don't act like you don't.
Maybe.
All right, production history for this. So the Jeffrey Wigand, Brown, and Williamson controversy was, of course, a major storyline that aired on 60 Minutes in 1996. Michael Mann was friendly with then 60 Minutes producer Lowell Bergman, and he maintained an active interest in the story. He read a screenplay that Eric Roth had written called The Good Shepherd about the first 25 years of the CIA. Based on the script, Mann approached Roth to help him co-write The Insider. The Good Shepherd, sidebar, is a film that we will be covering on this podcast. It's one of the most profoundly boring movies ever made, but should have been better. But back to this one, Mann and Roth wrote several outlines together and talked about the structure of the story. They also apparently wrote this in a diner in LA, which is really cool. Something that would never happen now. Roth interviewed Bergman numerous times for research, and the two men became friends. After he and Mann wrote the first draft together, this was at the Broadway Deli in Santa Monica, Roth met Jeffrey Wigand. The whistleblower was still under his confidentiality agreement and would not break it for Roth or Mann. Roth's initial impression of Wigand was that he came across as unlikable and defensive. I'd say that definitely translated to Russell Crowe's performance.
If listeners are curious, the Broadway Deli is unfortunately closed. but it did have a strong 2 out of 5 stars on Yelp.
You know what sucks? The restaurant that's in Heat, I think it's called Kate Mandolini's. That is also unfortunately closed.
Did it have a higher score, hopefully?
It did. I actually went there one of the first times I went to LA solely because of Heat, and I was not disappointed. As the two men continued to write more drafts, they made minor adjustments in the chronology, but they also stuck strictly to the facts wherever possible. The film is widely considered to be a very accurate depiction of what happened. Michael Mann originally envisioned Val Kilmer for the role of Jeffrey Wigand, which I could totally see that working.
Mhm.
Not to take anything away from Crowe in this film, but Kilmer would have done a great job. Producer Peter Jan Broeg suggested Russell Crowe, and after seeing him in LA Confidential, Mann flew Crowe down from Canada, where he was on location filming Mystery Alaska on the actor's one day off, and he had him read scenes from the Insider screenplay over a couple of hours. When Crowe read the scene where Wigand finds out that the 60 Minutes interview he did will not be aired, he captured the essence of Wigand so well that Mann knew he had found the perfect actor for the role. Crowe was only 33 years old at the time, and he was apprehensive about playing someone much older than himself. But true to Russell Crowe being Russell Crowe, he gained 35 pounds for the role. He shaved back his hairline, he bleached his hair 7 times, and he had daily application of wrinkles and liver spots put onto his skin to transform into Wigand, who was in his early to mid-50s during the events depicted in the film. Crowe was unable to speak to Wigand directly to prepare for the role, so he repeatedly listened to a 6-hour tape of Wigand. Sure, that didn't make him crazy.
Al Pacino was Mann's only choice to play Lowell Bergman. He wanted to see the actor play a role that he had never seen him do in a movie before. Now, Pacino, who had worked with Mann previously in Heat, was more than willing to take on the role. And to research for the film, Mann and Pacino hung out with reporters from Time magazine, spent time with ABC News, and Pacino actually met Bergman to help get in character. It was Pacino who suggested Christopher Plummer for the role of Mike Wallace. Pacino told Mann to watch Plummer in Sidney Lumet's Stage Struck, and afterwards he was the director's only choice to play Wallace. Plummer did not have to audition. He met with Mann and after several discussions was cast in the film. It was filmed from May to October 1998 in various locations, including Israel, Louisville, Kentucky, Mississippi, New York City, and then in the Bahamas. So post-production took almost a full year. That also explains the budget. I think we were joking about this before, but even the Bahamas scene, I think that was maybe 5 minutes. For the scene in which the deposition hearing takes place, the filmmakers used the actual courtroom in Pascagoula, Mississippi, where the deposition was given. Mike Moore, the Attorney General of Mississippi, played himself for the scenes involving the lawsuit, so that was very passionate. Jeffrey Wigand requested a ban on cigarettes in the movie. However, cigarettes are smoked in the movie at least 3 times. One, by a woman in the background as Wigand enters the airport shortly before being served with a restraining order. 2, by a Muslim soldier seen briefly with Lowell Bergman as he's being transported to the Hezbollah meeting site. And 3, by a photographer with whom Bergman converses briefly about what might be going on inside the courtroom. And when it comes to the budget, well, highest estimate is $90 million. Michael Mann must have spent quite a bit of money. And from some perspective, the film allegedly costs more to make than The Matrix or The Mummy, both of which came out in the same year.
That's it for the production history. Before we get into the discussion, we'll take a brief break as we hear from one of our sponsors. Today's podcast is brought to you by Sprizzy. Looking to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Meet Sprizzy, your video's ultimate matchmaker. Their tailored ad campaigns connect your content with viewers who are already looking for videos like yours. With Sprizzy, you're not just getting views, you're gaining subscribers who are genuinely interested in what you create. Are you ready to boost your reach? Visit Sprizzy.com today and let's launch your channel to new heights. Sprizzy, the smarter way to promote your YouTube channel. And now let's talk about Why Wasn't It Better? Although we're not really going to talk about Why Wasn't It Better because all 3 of us clearly love this film. And let me just say, this is what should have won Best Picture in 1999. American Beauty winning all those awards, that's aged poorly. It's hilarious to me.
Whoops.
Yeah, that's why I hate the Oscars. Some of it is just...
What if I told you that 15% of the governing body of the Academy Awards had a connection to the big heads at CBS the year that this film...
I would not be surprised by that.
Yeah, well, there's your number.
It's a miracle it got nominated.
Yeah, really.
I think this is going to be more along the lines of why this film failed at the box office.
Why wasn't it better in the public's perception?
Because the public is stupid.
Yeah.
It's just such an under the radar movie. It like you just of all the people that you know, how many of them have seen this movie? Would you estimate?
I can guarantee 5% of the people
of all the
in my
people
life.
I know. Well, my
of
dad
all
watched
the
it.
1,000 people I know.
My mom watched it.
It's
Yeah,
not many.
my mom and dad definitely watched this while they parked my ass in like some terrible kids movie in 1999.
They're one of the 200 people that saw this in theaters.
I mean, probably. Yeah.
You know, one of the reasons, I don't have it as an official reason, but I was thinking about this, and it seems like 1999 is a year that is regarded as one of the all-time best movie years. That the list of great movies that came out that year is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this theory that in any given year, people that go to the movies and watch movies, they only have so much mental real estate to appreciate and remember movies from that year. And I just think this movie just got lost in the shuffle.
Definitely not part of the cultural zeitgeist. I also feel like 1999 was definitely almost like changing of the guard for what film, entertainment, kind of how we consume media as we got into the 2000s definitely was. This movie definitely feels of the 90s, if that makes sense.
It really does. It's interesting, too, how there was another movie that failed at the box office that year that became enormously successsul as a cult film and is
Wild Wild West. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's it. No, do you know what I'm talking about though?
Can we
Austin
have hints?
Spowers, The Spy Who Shagged Me.
I'm trying to think. Any hint I give
Anton
you?
and I are just gonna like say random movies from 1999.
I mean, it is probably one of the most famous, if not the most famous film from 1999, and it was a box office failure, and yet
Galaxy
it
Quest?
is iconic. No. Any hint I give you is going to give it away. It's Fight Club.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go.
So that movie has a serious legacy despite failing at the box office. This film doesn't.
Shame.
It is. So I think the runtime is something that probably worked against this movie. I personally don't feel that this movie drags. I think it's paced pretty well. But if you don't know anything about this movie going into it, I feel like the first 30 minutes when they're in Israel, it doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the story. It's probably tough to get through.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, let's be honest, Michael Mann definitely is a camera lingerer type director, if that makes sense. There has to be a more, tropey term for it, I'm sure. But what's his shortest movie? Collateral at 2 hours, for example?
Probably.
Thief
Maybe
is 2
Manhunter, something like that.
Yeah, and this film really does build, and if you're patient and there along for the ride, the payoff is great. But I can totally see when we look at films that did great in 1999, this was probably not catching the attention spans of folks in the late 90s.
One thing I want to say about kind of the runtime too, and I think this is something present every Michael Mann movie. A lot of people, maybe think it drags or scenes go on for too long. But I think a lot of that has to do with like the lingering on the character's face because you want to kind of see what their inner monologue is without them outwardly expressing it. So like even in this movie, there's just like sections where people are just glancing around, silently staring into the distance, like Russell Crowe's inner monologue staring at the water. I'm like, that's a vibe I'm going for right there. And there's a lot of just kind of establishing almost like shots in every scene too. And I really feel like Michael Mann always does that because he's always looking to capture like the tormented soul of the man, really, of literally men too. And I think this movie is like kind of one of the biggest shining examples of it because of the subject matter itself.
There's so many shots like that. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we're first introduced to Jeffrey Wigand, there's no sound, there's no dialogue. It's just him cleaning out his desk right after he's been fired. We don't know that he's been fired yet, but it shows the rest of his coworkers like having like a birthday party or something with cake. And he's in another room behind glass cleaning out his desk. And it's like probably a solid 60 seconds where it's just visual storytelling. But that's why we love Michael Mann, for those touches.
For everything we love about Michael Mann, it like lends itself to the non-commercial success of him sometimes, because to any other, viewer, they could be like, all right, this doesn't need to be a whole like kind of scene over here. If that makes sense.
I think my wife lasted 20 minutes and she's like, all right, I'm going upstairs.
Well, I guess she doesn't stand for truth and justice and exposing criminals in our world today.
So I was like, well, wait, there's a Unabomber subplot that you need to wait for. Like,
oh, right, the Unabomber subplot. I love how that's Lowell Bergman. He's like acing it up the sleeves, like, I'm going to get us the Unabomber story.
Who is the lead FBI agent in there? What's his name?
Oh gosh.
He was on 24. Anton, we've talked about him on the podcast
Right.
before. He was in The Day After Tomorrow. What is his name? Nestor Serrano?
Oh, this is going to make me upset.
I think his name's Nestor Serrano, but he's like great character actor. He's just in this tiny role in this movie, and that's another thing we love about Michael Mann. All the wonderful actors that he puts in small roles.
Well, the fact is Jack Palladino, like, playing himself, or is that who you were referring to? Basically, like, the attorney of the stars and PI of the stars, how he's in there kind of advising Dr. Wygand. I love it. Like, I'm like, of course Michael Mann would have Jack Palladino himself and Mike Moore as himself in this too. Like, only Michael Mann could cast real lawyers as actors.
Who could forget Wings Hauser? One of the other things, too, about this film that I think it is a flaw if you're watching this just as a movie. Russell Crowe disappears for about an hour of the film in the second half, and it's a little jarring if you're not prepared for it. The first half of the film is very much the main character. It is about him. And then the second half, it becomes the Lowell Bergman story, where Pacino takes over. Now, I don't mind that so much, but I could see that rubbing people the wrong way. You're like, well, what happened to Wygand? What's he doing? He really does disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to attention spans for non-conventional storytelling, or at least like from within the medium of film, I think that, again, we really have to kind of go to what were the films being released at the time and what was this film going up against, and how easily kind of a longer 2-hour film within this, Michael Mann style could really get easily buried. We already mentioned a couple films, but I just wanted to, really drive this point home that it was really stacked up against some like big films in November 1999. Some might recall a great film like Toy Story 2, Pokemon, the first movie, which was a major phenomenon. The World Is Not Enough. So there are some pretty big films that this was kind of going up against.
I love how those are the films you go with, not like, I mean, I understand that's at the time. Yeah, Sleepy Hollow. You're like, what about Ed TV? I thought that was the film of 1999.
oh man.
Or Mary-Kate and Ashley's Passport to Paris.
Ugh, great film. Big fan.
That probably was a hit. I don't know.
I'm sure it was too.
They were a thing back then. I think the tagline of this film tells you what you should expect, but a lot of people don't pay attention to that. I mean, I didn't, but until I read it. But it says 2 men driven to tell the truth no matter what the cost. End quote. So it absolutely delivers what it's selling you. It is about 2 protagonists, which is pretty unusual for a movie, although Michael Mann, of course, has done this in the past with Heat. So he had experience doing this. Number 2 reason why it wasn't better, the subject matter. This was always going to be a tough sell. One of the things that you may hear about this film is that it's boring, right? I mean, Garret, you said it yourself. It's like you're explaining this movie. It's like it's based on a 60-minute story. You're like, huh.
Yeah, tough sell.
Because the other part of it is, too, as they point this out in the movie, I think Mike Wallace points it out to a couple different people in a meeting. It's like, okay, well, we already know that cigarettes are bad for you in the 1990s. So it's like the story isn't really the story. Like the actual 60 minutes piece shouldn't have really shocked people. What is far more important about this film, and is I think the most important legacy about this film, is the tobacco company putting corporate pressure on CBS News to suppress this story.
Well, I think even secondarily to that was CBS almost putting the pressure on CBS News to almost like challenge its journalistic integrity too. I think was very shocking at the time because, I mean, still in the 90s, 60 Minutes was the most watched program in American history too, almost like the bastion of like truth and integrity too. So to your point, like that's almost the smoking gun, or like the selling point, I should say, of the movie. It's like CBS trying to destroy the integrity of its own news program for the sake of corporate, not vanity, because that's something Mike Wallace says in the film itself, but for like corporate like protection almost.
Yeah, I mean, how do they open the film but, Lowell Bergman in the Hezbollah camp just saying they should trust him because he represents CBS News, which is the number one, most objective and most popular news story in the news, cast in the world. So from that respect, we already kind of set the scene of there's a very big institution here.
Yeah, and for all of our younger listeners, this does not exist anymore, but this really was a time, Garret, you were starting to get into this, where 60 Minutes was the gold standard for news. It was really trusted. I remember my parents watching it every week, and 60 Minutes is, of course, still around. It's still pretty popular, but it's not what it was.
Now what it is the impending doom of Monday, and that there's no more football besides Sunday Night Football.
this always aired right after the afternoon football game.
After the 4 p.m. slot, yep.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this was the beginning of, I guess, what you would say, the transition from broadcast news to like corporate news.
Well, you know what? As they said in the movie, our standards have to be higher than anyone else because we are the standard of everyone else. No longer news.
Oh, yeah, Gina.
Now everyone gets their news on TikTok and literally everywhere else.
You mean infotainment, as they like to call it?
Do either of you watch 60 Minutes?
No. I have to admit, I do not.
No, I'm not going to pretend I do.
No.
I think the last time was maybe May 2009. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Whoa,
they
super
call
specific.
It spoofing.
And Anton's like, okay, so in college, what I have to do is.
Exactly.
Mike Wallace was gone by that point, right?
Yeah, and his son Chris was doing God knows what on God knows which network.
Well, that's the other piece of this, right? Like Mike Wallace, who is a major character in this film, he was the face of 60 Minutes. And I think when he retired, they probably lost a lot of credibility. I think he retired in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. I should probably have written that down for this episode, but I didn't. Regardless, yeah, he was a big part of that too. I mean, I think when he retired, I'm far from an expert on 60 Minutes, but I think he left a void that they never filled.
You're not a big fan of Leslie Stahl? Big fan of Leslie.
Sure.
That answers my question. That's fine. That answers my joke. Terrible joke. Keep moving this along.
Well, I mean, he was the primary contributor on 60 Minutes for what, like 35 years or something like that?
Long enough, yeah.
Yeah. But this is the best thing about the film in a way, right? This is why it's aged so well. Lowell Bergman was concerned with CBS Business influencing their news division on air, which would have been basically unheard of in the mid-90s. It's, of course, laughable now. I mean, but it's like at the time of release, Michael Mann told Salon magazine, quote, "The picture is 2 hours and 32 minutes of talking. Everything is dialogue. On the one hand, you could view it as a horrible restriction. On the other hand, you could view it as this great adventure," end quote. Disney executives acknowledged the challenge that they had when they were marketing this. If you watch the trailer, you would think it's a thriller, but it's really not, right? It's a drama that has some thrills in it.
Sounds like when I got convinced by a trailer to see Good Night and Good Luck when I was 14 years old, like expecting way more than a talkie Edward Murrow pick. Whoops.
Yeah,
Good job,
not a movie that appeals to 14-year-olds. Although I've actually seen that kind of recently.
It's
pretty
good.
Cool movie. Yeah, I like it.
It's great. Yeah, but when you're 14, you're like, damn it, I had backed the wrong horse.
Did you see that in the theater? You're like, what is this?
Yeah, I made my parents see that with me, and they were like, okay.
They want to watch color on? Like,
my dad was like, let's go. I got him. But then, you know what? Michael Clayton came around, and they kind of got me back. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me right back in. Pacino.
The movie's amazing. It's one of my favorite movies, Michael Clayton.
It is.
I love it.
I'm digressing so much on the political thrillers, but I do think, Pat, to your point, what I'm trying to say is marketing can really kind of make or break a talkie movie like these.
Disney hoped this would do well. They cited All the President's Men as a comparison. I think that's really naive on their part, though. This is not a conspiracy thriller movie.
They thought it was 3 Days of the Condor, All the President's Men. Also movies that came out in the 70s.
Yeah, it's not what this movie is.
Grasping at straws, if you ask me.
I think this is this has far more in common with another 1976 film, Network. Now, that was more of a satire. This is very straight and dry. But it has the same central theme, right? Which is corporate interests influencing so-called news.
Now I just want to watch broadcast news with Holly Hunter, too. I just want to watch things about the news now, is what you're getting me in the mood for.
Yeah, news just doesn't exist anymore. It's just so different now.
It is very
Anton,
different.
Give us your pitch for a TikTok news movie.
It's 30 seconds, and it's literally just ads.
It's literally just ads. Oscar winner. 2029 or whatever that movie will come out.
Then Disney chairman Joe Roth said about The Insider, quote, "Everyone is really proud of this movie, but it's one of those rare times when adults loved a movie, yet they couldn't convince their friends to go see it any more than we could convince people in marketing to market the film," end quote. Garret, I guess your parents couldn't convince anyone to see it.
My parents couldn't convince me to drink water if I was thirsty as a kid.
So one of the things, if you need some entertainment for 5 minutes, is to promote this film, Michael Mann gave an interview with Charlie Rose, speaking of canceled.
Whoops.
But Charlie Rose asked him what the film was about. Michael Mann his answer took about 2 minutes, which he then admitted was problematic when it came to marketing the film. And Rose gave him shit for it. He's like, you took a long time to answer that question. He's like, yeah, I know.
I love Michael Mann, but he definitely seems like the guy, if he like worked in a corporation, who would just be as far away removed from marketing as much as you can. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he would be like Square in product management or like program management, something like that.
I'll go farther. I'll say very much an engineer.
Yeah, probably honestly head of engineering at that point.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of think of like maybe some modern day comparisons where conversation and just people in rooms really is just the main focus, but it actually does kind of capture like the larger, just a larger part of the population. And Succession really comes to mind, where there is conspiracy there. It is really about relationships. It touches on a lot of some similar themes just around ethics. But at the same time, I think what it had going for it with Succession, of course, it's a TV series. It's not quite a one-to-one comparison. But even then, just it is difficult within the medium of film to just have everything around conversations.
I think that's a really good comparison you're making. I think where Succession or something like that succeeds is razor sharp humor. And if there's one thing Michael Mann can't do, it's humor. There's no humor in this film whatsoever. I think I remember Jamie Foxx's character in Miami Vice trying to crack a joke, and it's just like, huh? Like, is that a joke in a Michael Mann film? Like, this is strange.
You know what I will, though? There is some good comic relief in here by Christopher Plummer, but it is a lot of like, kind of dry sarcasm. And I feel like that's where Mann kind of shines, is like that like sardonic humor, like almost like, can you believe this is our situation? And like kind of cracking a joke about like everyone's misery almost.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah. There's some hilarious stuff in this movie, but I don't think he wrote it as humor.
No, I don't think he writes it as humor, but he casts the actors that he knows can kind of like lend almost like levity to it.
Right. Plummer read the script and he's just like, yes. I'm going to chew this up.
I think I think obviously as arduous as any Michael Mann film is to make, and we know this from how he just shoots all his films, I feel like a lot of actors kind of just lend themselves to the role and may not even know kind of the almost person or the character that they're playing. Like, do you think Philip Baker Hall realizes he's like the main villain of this movie? Because I don't think he does.
No. Do you know anything about the real life Don Hewitt?
I'm not going to pretend to know any more than like what I learned in like high school ethics classes.
He was a real life villain. Let's just say he would not have survived the Me Too movement.
Oh, so in terms
Seems
of
to
just
be
like
a thing for CBS execs.
things that I found amusing in the film. Now I'm sure it was actually a lot deeper, but during the phone conversation towards the end, where Lowell and Wygand were on the phone, and he's Lowell's at the beach, and he just keeps going into the water, and I just kept thinking, every scene he's just more and more, he's like in swim trunks getting deeper into the ocean just to get better reception.
Yeah, can you hear me now? No, dude, you're in the middle of the Atlantic.
In 1999.
Yeah, now go inside your house and use your landline.
I'm processing this more. I feel like Mann gets humor out of his performances rather than the writing. Like I was just thinking of a great example. Like Pacino is hilarious in Heat.
Yeah. Oh my God, Waingro is like laugh out loud funny to me too.
Waingro.
Yeah. But like any movie, like Collateral 2, like Tom Cruise is absolutely hilarious in like some parts with like how he deadpans too. You can find humor in all of those movies, but I agree. It's with the character, less the dialogue.
Let's start with Mr. Wallace.
Mike. When he like imitates her.
Oh my God.
What is she trying to say to him? She's trying to get him to shut up, right? She's like, Mike. He's Mike.
It was a compromise.
He goes, yeah, she's like, Mike. And he's like, Mike, try Mr. Wallace. We work in the same corporation, but doesn't mean we work in the same profession. And I was like, God damn it, you're dressing down Gina Gershon.
I'm a little disappointed, though, that scene cut short. I'm like, give me 30 more seconds of him yelling at her. Like, please.
I've been in this business for 50 years.
He didn't. He says more than that, Anton.
Yeah, I think there's a F word in there.
There's some incredible F-bombs in this film.
I know, and just like all the corporate like lackeys, like Stephen Tobolowsky. Oh my gosh, him in this movie is like such a great, just like 5 minutes of just like pure gas.
Do you guys think that it probably hits closer to home, or of just like we like it more because we are in corporate environments, we've been in these corporate environments, so we find these kinds of things just fascinating?
Yeah, I think that, yes, I think what you're saying is correct. Like, Gina Gershon's character is one of the most frighteningly accurate portrayals of a corporate lawyer that I've ever seen in a film.
Right, like she is the man.
Yes, I have some notes on her that I'll get to later, but like it's a brilliant bit of casting and acting from her. But I think we're biased to some degree, but also we're going to get to this in the next reason. Like, I think the reason we're loving this movie so much is it's just these incredible actors just sharing these scenes together, and it's some of the best written dialogue of the era.
I mean, I think that's like a perfect segue. Like, the cast in this movie is so stacked. It's honestly like the USA Olympics, like men's basketball team or women's basketball team. Everybody watched the Olympics starting July 26th this season on Peacock. But as I was kind of saying over here too, like, you have so many like just great actors. Cliff Curtis as the Sheik in the beginning, showing up. Rip Torn for a random scene. Michael Gambon is like the B&W CEO. Breckin Meyer is Al Pacino's son, who lays in bed with him and walks out the door and is uncredited.
The Pepsi girl.
The Pepsi girl is in this. The Queen of New York, Debbie Mazur. Like, oh my God, you got everybody in it. And
it's incredible.
Yes, like, and that's to your point. It's like the greatest actor with the smallest amount of screen time or smallest bit of dialogue just brings like so much to the scene and just like lends, I think, so much gravitas, which, you know, the subject matter of this movie, I think, kind of necessitates that.
I don't think it's hyperbole to say this. This is some of the best casting of all time.
Oh, for sure. I agree. It's
very rare to get a film like this, actually. I was thinking about this more, where you get two heavyweights sharing so much screen time like this. Like, I might be a little higher on Crowe than the average person. I really do think Russell Crowe is one of the most talented actors ever. Pacino, obviously is. But there's just not a lot of films like this where you get these two types of actors. They're very different actors, and they're sharing a lot of scenes together with a lot of dialogue, and it is their chemistry so great. It is such a privilege to see this in a film like this.
I was just going to say it's the perfect balance. It's not one strong star outshining another. And like you said, Pat, it's because of that chemistry and the way that the film is put together. And please, Garrett, what gem are you going to grace us with? I'm excited.
Well, that was a gem that you just gave us right there, too. I was going to say, too, like to Pat and yours points, it's like, what movies of recent memory are kind of similar to this in terms of like that much star power, but like everybody passing the rock, for lack of better terms, like The Post, Spotlight, like those are the two that immediately came to mind from like the past 10 years. Oppenheimer, yeah, it's a close one. I feel like Spotlight probably the closest in terms of like exposing the truth and being told not to expose said truth.
I mean, Heat, that's not a recent example, but Heat, absolutely.
No, it's a great one too.
I mean, very early example, The Godfather Part 2.
Yeah. This film made me think about that Irvin Kershner quote, Anton. Garrett, bear with me here. So on his commentary for Never Say Never Again, Irvin Kershner, the director, was comparing Sean Connery to Klaus Maria Brandauer. And he said, Sean needs very little direction because he'll try to share and work with other actors. With an actor like Brandauer, you need to control them because their range is so great they can do anything, and he'll try to compete with other actors and dominate other actors. And I thought it was really insightful, and it's always made me think, whenever I watch really any movie with great acting, again, I always try to think, do actors fall into these two camps? Are there actors that can do both? You think about Sean Connery, he really does. He can dominate a scene, but he's always being generous with others and trying to share the screen with others. You get that in this movie. And I think Pacino can do both. He's capable of dominating a scene, but in this film, he is pretty loud. He's not Son of a Woman loud. And yet, but at the same, he's very powerful in this film. Yet at the same time, he's not trying to dominate everyone else in the scene. And I'm amazed he wasn't nominated for this film. This is absolutely one of Pacino's best performances.
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of like in the era where everyone's starting to associate with Al Pacino with the gimme all you got-ness of him. But this movie, he's not really, loud Pacino until the last, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, when the script kind of requires him to be a little more like exasperated and like bring that out from him too. Like, I really do think like you meet his character, you see how almost like level-headed, kind of how calm his almost like life and surroundings are. And it's the exact opposite of what we see with Russell Crowe's character too. So it's what we're not almost used to seeing this from Pacino in the 90s. And I feel like public perception almost like clouds that vision, if that makes sense.
What was it that he said? You screwed you, don't invert it. That was exactly what he said, right?
Oh, Philip Baker Hall. He's like, you fucked us. He's like, no, you fucked you. Don't invert stuff.
Which is such a great line. Like,
Incredible.
again, that's another like A+ zinger I need to like bring into like every meeting I have where someone screws me over.
You really buy that he's been working with Plummer for years. They really seem like they know each other well.
And you know what's so great? Like in that scene too, like we're all talking about like what Pacino says and then kind of like, you know, the long rant that he goes on after about like journalistic integrity. And then basically when he looks over to Mike and then Mike tells him like,
I'm with Don on this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's
crushing.
I guess that's a totally different scene on that one too. But my point is, like, when he kind of crushes him on that one too, and then Pacino just looks at him like in the face. I'm like, that is such a great bit of acting. Like, you can see like that you see that internal monologue. You're like, this man just looks like he's broken down, like almost like Wygand's in that case, where he's like, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do here.
Some of the best work Pacino's ever done. He just slumps and walks out of the room without saying another word.
Exactly. And Michael Mann lingers on him. And like, that's something that just works because again, like you are reading everything about this character and hearing everything without him saying even one word.
Like I said, he should have been nominated for this along with Crowe. I think this is unquestionably his most underrated performance because this never gets mentioned amongst the top Pacino performances, and it really should be. I'm not putting it on the same level as Godfather 1 and 2, but for my money, this is just behind those along with Heat and Dog Day Afternoon.
I agree. Mm-hmm. You know what? Let's put more respect on late 90s Pacino and De Niro in some cases. Ronin, great De Niro. Insider, great Pacino. F all the haters.
Devil's Advocate?
Devil's Advocate. I'll take it. I'll watch it.
I think you're right. I think he gets a bad rap for some of his 90s stuff. Like he was way better performances than he gets credit for. Mm-hmm. I even think Scent of a Woman's an amazing performance. I know it's been clowned on a lot, but he's great.
I actually really liked him in Any Given Sunday.
I love Any Given Sunday. Yeah. That movie gives me whiplash every time I watch it, and I love every second of watching NFL Blitz in film form.
I don't think I'd call it a good movie, but it's a movie.
It's a movie. It's cinema.
Yeah, that was Oliver Stone making statements.
Oh, that was Oliver Stone trying to throw 100 miles per hour on every pitch and just missing the strike zone a lot.
Just wait till we do Nixon. Wait till we do Nixon.
Oh, that's a weird movie.
It's a really weird movie.
Really
perfect candidate for Why Wasn't It Better, too.
Yeah, there you go.
Pacino's chemistry with Crowe is flawless. All of their scenes together, I could watch at least once a week when they're talking in Wygand's car. The scene in the Japanese restaurant, they're feeling each other out. All of their phone conversations. That's the heart and soul of this movie. It's the performances of these two guys. Crowe is way more subdued, way moodier, but he matches Pacino in every way. And it's not easy because this is why I mentioned the Kirshner quote earlier. Pacino can very easily steal a scene. And this is a very atypical performance from Crowe. I've never really seen him do anything like this where he just disappears into the character. Because speaking of stealing a scene, Crowe can do it too. And he doesn't get outshone. And he matches Pacino's intensity perfectly with a very subdued performance. And I don't think it's Russell Crowe's best performance, but I do think it's his most interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Pat. And I mean, I think one of the things that I reflected on with the film is also just even what is, Wygand's character. He's the protagonist of the film, but how would you even describe his character?
Put upon.
Yep.
Kind of unstable.
Yeah. You wouldn't say he's humble, would you?
No.
Right?
No.
The opposite of that. So not something atypical of a protagonist.
Yeah, just not a likable guy. Probably doesn't have many friends.
Huge nerd is for sure. The one thing I will say too, like he's a very spiteful individual too. Mm-hmm. Like he doesn't even want to break the NDA because he wants to do what's right or what he thinks is ethically right. His decision to go, in the movie at least, was basically the company treating him like crap when he was employed and then using heavy-handed means and basically forcing him to shut up against his confidentiality agreement. And it was something he wasn't even considering breaking before their threats, if that makes sense. And again, the movie does exaggerate it, but I think at least how it's presented, we just see him almost as a man who's just spurned into vengeance.
Right. And he even says it's because, he had a confrontation where he was told that he couldn't do something. And so I feel like when you have such nuance with a character, so much subtlety and just kind of quite a character really built out, Crowe did fantastic. in this role.
One thing I want to kind of expand on that point too, it's all three of these characters, all three of the main characters, and I'm going to put Christopher Plummer in that, with Pacino and Russell Crowe too, was kind of almost like their betrayal against almost CBS is brought upon the fact that they were duped by kind of the corporate overlords, be it B&W or CBS. Like in the end, after realizing his segment was basically just cut to shreds, Mike Wallace sides back again with Lowell against CBS management, kind of uniting that triangle to get the story out there too. So I think that's kind of something that how all of their arcs kind of complete at the same time. And they're basically men who weren't going to do anything until they were basically strong-armed against their will out of nowhere. And then that kind of led to that betrayal against the perpetrators of theirs.
Completely agree.
Nice. 3 for 3. We are the Mike Wallace, Wygant, and Lowell Bergman of podcasting.
I want to be Mike Wallace.
If anyone listening to this hasn't seen the film, I would recommend watching the actual 60 Minutes interview, or at least portions of it, because Crowe really does capture Wygant's like voice and mannerisms perfectly. It's really uncanny how well he nailed it. And again, Kevin Spacey won Best Actor that year. I'm just pointing that out. Crowe was, we mentioned this, he was 33 years old when he filmed this. This is the film that I would show to anyone. If anyone asked me, like, I've never seen a movie by Russell Crowe, like, what's his best performance? And I would probably tell you Gladiator or Master and Commander. But I would recommend they watch this film because this is the film I would show to anyone when I've always stood by, like I said, I think he's one of the most talented actors, not just of his generation ever. He really reminds me of Richard Burton. He could have done anything, any role.
I think he had a little problems in his life that might have stopped him from doing.
Still had an incredible career, though. You're right. He was his own worst enemy in the end, I think.
I mean, he had such a great run. We can start even in 1997 with LA Confidential, honestly. But then going into The Insider, into Gladiator, into A Beautiful Mind, and you could say kind of capping it with Master and Commander, which I know a lot of people haven't seen, but, critically and even commercially to some degree, very well regarded.
Another one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even his lesser movies, right? Like Cinderella Man, he's great in. American Gangster, he's fine.
Mystery Alaska, one of my favorite movies. Go Rangers.
Proof of Life is one of my favorite movies as well. No, I'm not kidding. Garret, have you seen Proof of Life?
No, I have not seen Proof of Life.
No one has. I think more people saw The Insider than Proof of Life.
What's that, Taylor Hackford? That's Taylor Hackford, Meg Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah. See?
I'm not exaggerating. It's one of my favorite movies. I love it.
See, but again, that's another movie, like a $60 million movie, just forgotten to time. Too.
Forgotten. Well, we're going to cover it on the podcast. It was a victim of bad press because Russell Crowe broke up Meg Ryan's marriage to Dennis Quaid filming that movie.
Oopsies.
Whoops.
Oopsies. Well, still got Jack Quaid out of it, so I guess we're okay.
I mean, even modern day, like he's so entertaining as Zeus in Love and Thunder.
Are you excited to see him as Nikolai Kravenov in Kraven the Hunter?
I like to think it's the same character.
The same character as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from The Mummy.
Oh, yes.
What was he? Wasn't he in Man of Steel?
Jor-El.
Is great as Jor-El. Yeah. That first 30 minutes with Jor-El and like the destruction of Krypton, I think is a genuinely interesting movie. I'm like, I would watch the hell out of that.
You mean the part of the movie before it gets driven off a cliff?
You mean before Kevin Costner drives himself into a tornado? Sorry, spoiler alert.
Oh, Kevin Costner.
Don't, Clark. Don't.
Or you just
hand out.
Okay.
Sure, whatever, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, Crowe's had a great first half of the career, and not so much now, but the stuff we listed, I mean, like I said, he's one of the all-time greats. I have him up there. My favorite actors are probably Connery, Paul Newman, Cary Grant, Denzel. I'd put Crowe in there. That's how highly I think of him.
I mean, my list includes Nicholson, of course.
Keep going.
He's like, it's just Nicholson.
Just Nicholson.
Just Nicholson.
So entertaining.
I mean, you named a few of them, but yeah, of course, Nicholson. I really love Robin Williams.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wesley Snipes. He's on my list. No joke. Stanley Tucci for sure.
Not even laughing at that. I agree.
Love Snipes.
Who doesn't?
I had to be harsh on him for Blade Trinity, but I didn't have a choice. He gave me no choice.
Society.
Yeah. He made choices making that movie that, didn't help him.
So about The Insider.
Yes. Let's talk about Christopher Plummer, who, for whatever crime against humanity, was not even nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this film. He is astounding in this role.
What a performance. Like, holy crap.
He is so good. I mean, he's another one of the all-time greats in my opinion, because I've seen him in a lot of stuff, never given a bad performance. He knows how to have fun with a role. Like if you think of him as General Chang in Star Trek 6, he knows when to go big. Yeah, Garrett just made a face. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
What? Look this up. Look up Christopher Plummer Star Trek.
I'm just saying. I'm like, wow, what a reference you like just pulled out of your back pocket. That was
he's
good.
Amazing in that movie.
Yeah.
But Plummer knows how to have fun, because I won't say he's hamming it up in this movie, but he goes just to the line and knows when to hold back. Like when he goes off on Gina Gershon, you just start applauding.
I agree. As someone who loves Gina Gershon and would never yell at her in real life, her character unfortunately did deserve it though in this film.
She did. Mike. Try Mr. Wallace. What does he say? He's like, just because we work at the same company doesn't mean we're in the same profession.
Work in the same profession. I'm like, God damn, that's a burn.
This may not surprise you, but real life Mike Wallace was not happy with this film and how he was portrayed.
I'm sure.
Yeah, shocker. I bet his biggest problem, can I guess, his biggest problem was like kind of how easily Mike folded in the beginning of censoring the segment. He's like, the real Mike Wallace would never do that.
He's gone on record about that.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
My research did not include that, but look at that.
Bergman's response to it was pretty measured, but you can read between the lines. Wallace, I think what's fair to say is Wallace could have spoken up much sooner and did not, which they basically show in the film. But at the same time, why I think it's such a fascinating performance is you understand why Wallace sided with it initially. When he visits Bergman in the hotel room, he says, after everything that I've given to this company, I did not want to be the guy who helped a tobacco giant crash this network. And you're like, I kind of get it. Garrett, tell us how much you like Gina Gershon.
Just a transition to my love of the movie Bound by the Wachowskis. Oh my gosh, I love Gina Gershon. Her character,
not because
by the
of
way,
Showgirls?
No, obviously not. When she gets pushed down the stairs in Showgirls. But
just wondering.
I will say, when I remember seeing Bound when I was like 10 years old, which is not a movie any 10-year-old child should say. Yeah, I saw The Matrix. Luckily, I'd seen The Matrix before that. I was like, what else have these directors made? Like as a kid, I remember seeing it in Blockbuster. I was like, oh, cool, The Matrix guys did this.
Wow, this is
now women.
Pretty different from The Matrix.
Yeah, I was like, wow, cool filmmaking.
Yeah,
whoa, hey, I don't think I'm allowed to see this one. But honestly, Gina Gershon was like a crush of childhood. Face Off, Bound, for obvious reasons too. What else do I remember in? Oh my God, Showgirls, obviously. What was she in? The Player? I remember seeing that as a kid too. I'm trying to remember what other big movies I can like think of her as like from my childhood. But I don't know, she just always seemed like she was everywhere too. And she has the best side character in Curb Your Enthusiasm. When she's the Orthodox, I'm like laughing at myself like too.
Can I be vulnerable for a sec and just
yes,
of course.
I need to admit that when watching the film and seeing her character, I thought I think I've seen her in something recently. What do you think it ended up being?
Showgirl.
Nope.
Aquafina is Nora from Queens because she was in that.
She wasn't. No, it wasn't that. Although now I need to go back and watch and see where it was. But no, not that.
Oppenheimer.
Thanksgiving.
No.
I'm trying to think of what else.
It's much more embarrassing.
I mean, I feel like you're leading us somewhere.
It was as Jughead Jones' mom on Riverdale.
No.
Yeah. What is that?
Me. What?
Is that a TV show?
CW.
What are you,
baby?
7? What are you?
What were you?
It was all.
Were you stuck in a dentist's office or something?
It was all on Netflix, and
here I am talking about her amazing like turn as a sexy Hasidic woman in Curb, and you're watching. Yeah, you watched it.
I thought I was going to get like some saucy Showgirls takes here, but no.
It was no. Like I said, it was just me in the small town of Riverdale.
Did you know she played Melania Trump in The Good Fight? I'm like now looking at her IMDb.
What?
That is hilarious.
I need to see that.
And apparently she played Jughead's mom in Riverdale, Gladys Jones, for all you Riverdale heads out there.
Was that her character's name in Showgirls?
Gladys Jones.
Yeah, it was
Jughead.
It was just Jugs, actually. Just Jugs.
Oh, wow.
Crystal Canes.
Well, we're going to cover that on the podcast at some point. So,
as much as I love Gina Gershon, just like every other woman in a Michael Mann film, they are shown as incompetent, evil, bad at their jobs, or just trying to get in men's ways of doing their jobs. And I feel like I am not mistaken.
Was she bad at her job, or was she doing her job perfectly?
Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. Being a bad person at her job, not bad at her job. Like she is seen as like the evil entity.
I'll say this about her character's name, Helen Caporelli. They made that name up to, I would assume, avoid some kind of litigation. You can Google who she is based on. Her character is, of course, based on a real person, but they changed the name.
You can add them on LinkedIn.
You probably can.
Yeah. Anton already has. Anton endorsed her from Microsoft Word.
I don't want to sleep on her though, because the second she walks into the room, you're just like, you know exactly what's going to happen.
That is a perfect casting for like
it really
high-powered corporate lawyer who, like, when they walk in the room, everyone's face is just like, oh God, like we are just so effed with whatever she's about to tell us.
I've watched this movie probably, 30 times, and you pick up all the little things after a while. If you notice in that scene where she's essentially questioning Philip Baker Hall, Pacino, and Plummer, if you notice, she keeps asking them questions, and then when Pacino tries to answer, she keeps cutting him off, and it's Pacino's just getting so annoyed. It's wonderful stuff.
She's a good lawyer.
She is.
She's a good lawyer. Mike.
Thieves in suits. That's what Plummer says in that hotel
again
scene.
Yeah, she is very good at her job in representing like CBS like corporate interests, whereas like Debbie Mazar is just like, what's happening in every scene? Like she just feels like out of the loop in every conversation. They're like kind of portrayed as like the opposite ends of the spectrum of like corporate women and Michael Mann.
Yes. And then you get, Mrs. Wygant. Well, Jeffrey, what about our money?
I said, what about my money?
What am I going to do, Jeffrey? Does that mean I have to get a job?
Anton, you look like you're about to like get it on this accent game. Come on, give us your Foghorn Leghorn.
Come on, Anton, join the party.
On, Anton, I said that I had the MS.
I said I had an MS, and he doesn't pay for our son anymore.
Jonas Miller from Twister. Unrealized idea. Oh, I get it. You think I stole your idea for a storm tracker?
That's a very good. Yeah, you got that good Southern drawl.
Oh, thank you, Garrett.
Oh, no problem.
What's the real estate developer in the new Twisters? He's just like, don't worry, we gonna take care of you.
he has the mullet and the bolo tie. He was if he had entrance music, he could definitely be a pro wrestler like heel.
I don't get how Diane Venora in this movie did not come out saying, I said, what intonation is happening to our mortgage? Like, I was just waiting for her to say that.
I'll be a June bug dipped in molasses.
Oh, how are we going to make sweet tea without any money, sweetheart? Also, let's just like quick transition to Diane Venora. I feel like now I'm like all in on the women in this film. No,
Jeffrey, I tried to warn you they ran out of bourbon at the Piggly Wiggly.
The Piggly Wiggly. Love a good Piggly Wiggly. She is like the least supportive. Like, who doesn't support? She is so non-supportive to her husband after like losing his job and getting threatened. She's like, how could you do this?
Counterpoint. Did Jeffrey Wygant suck as a husband?
Seemed like it.
Counterpoint. I have none because you're 100% right.
I texted that to Pat, and I just remember one of the things with the film is you kind of get the scenes of her, being very frustrated with the situation, but we don't know how long it has been of just like the constant, calls, people scurrying around in their backyard, getting bombarded with just whoever the big tobacco companies are sending at their house to throw rocks at their windows. You don't know how long that's been going on.
Put a bullet in their mailbox, allegedly.
Oh my God. Yeah, that definitely did not happen in real life, but let me tell you, for dramatic effect, it works very well.
It's fantastic drama in the film.
Well, what's the line when he calls the FBI? He's like, do you have a history of an emotional problem, Mr. Wygant? He's like, yes. I get extremely emotional when assholes put bullets in my mailbox. Best quote of the movie, in my opinion.
That is the only weak link in the film, I think, is like that's never really followed up on the fact that the FBI just takes his computer out of his house. It's never brought up again.
But I think that goes really well to Anton's point. Like, it's almost like we don't know how many times like this almost like quote unquote harassment or like constant check-ins from like FBI is happening and how stressful that can be to the wife and the daughters and things like that. We really only see a lot of the emotional turmoil from Wygant's point of view, which is more his frustration with himself. And like, he wants to get back to his daughters, but I don't know. It's like his ends don't justify his means necessarily of how he's trying to go about it. It's like, it's very selfish and almost self-serving, you could say, to some degree.
Well, I think the perfect scene that encapsulates that is when they're at dinner with Bergman and Wallace, and he apparently just didn't tell his wife that he was going to record the interview, and she freaks out, and then he He just goes to the bar and starts drinking. It's like,
Also,
how could you not have told her?
Also, what do you think you were doing out to dinner with Mike Wallace? Like, this is just your husband's like random friend, like the most famed broadcaster at the time.
The rest of the cast in this film is such an impressive murderer's row of character actors. I don't even know if we're going to have time to get to all of them, but I'm just going to rattle off some names. We've touched on them a bunch already, but Philip Baker Hall, Stephen Tobolowsky, Bruce McGill, huge.
Great.
Colm Fiore, huge. Michael Gambon, astounding in this basically one scene that he's in. Debbie Mazar, we mentioned. Lindsay Krause plays Bergman's wife. You know, she was a great character actor in her day. I mean, McGill, he's basically in 2 or 3 scenes. The courtroom scene, I mean, he goes for it.
That is like the one you put in the trailer to get like people in the seats and get excited. When he says, "Wipe that smirk off your face," I was like sitting up, basically.
So
I was like, okay, I am locked in now to this scene.
He is in the trailer. I don't know if you watched. Did either of you watch the trailer?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I really should watch the trailers because trailers were just cut so well.
It made it seem like it was more of a action film.
Yeah. Michael Gambon is featured heavily in the trailer, even though he's only in the one scene. But this is the definition of what makes a character actor a great character actor. Obviously, Gambon has been in lead roles plenty of times. I don't know how he got in this film because he's doing his LBJ accent, right? He actually played LBJ in a very good HBO film called Path to War. Complete scumbag in this film. He might as well be a reptile. When he just casually threatens Wygan's life, his family's life, but he does it so artfully. I have this quote written down. He says, "Upon reflection, we decided to expand our zone of comfort with you." End quote. It's just what a wonderful line.
Did we already mention Rip Torn in the film?
He had some scenes cut because did you notice him in the film at all?
He was super short.
Yeah,
in the helicopter, kind of towards the end.
Yeah. My understanding is that he had some scenes cut because you see his name in the credits. You're like, oh, Rip Torn. But yeah.
I mean, hey, we said it before. Breckenmeyer literally shows up as son who gets into bed with Al Pacino and walks out the door.
Do you guys like Cliff Curtis?
Yeah.
What's not to like about the Sheik?
No, I mean, I agree. Love me some Cliff Curtis.
Dude,
it's
Training Day Cliff Curtis? Ooh, chef's kiss.
It is just kind of amazing, like the casting from Chicano Gangbanger to Sheik in this film.
To the Sheik.
Hollywood was a great time.
As racially ambiguous as Steven Seagal.
I mean, he did play... Yeah, I think he played like an Iraqi rebel in 3 Kings, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, let me look. Amir Abdullah. Yeah, there you go.
How did he get in this movie? 2 lines of dialogue, and he's barely recognizable.
He's got a great agent.
Plays Pablo Escobar in Blow. I remember that.
He's Maori. By the way, listeners, he's Maori. Yeah.
And he's also our Fire Lord Ozai in The Last Airbender by M. Night Shyamalan, a masterpiece.
At some point, we are going to have to cover that, and I'm just dreading it. We're doing The Village early next season, Garrett.
Oh, Village is not great.
Yeah, no. You're like, I can't.
No, I tried. I got 2 seconds in me. But yeah, to Anton's point, love me some Cliff Curtis, the most racially ambiguous actor according to his IMDb.
I think we have the greatest character actor of all time in this film, though. Philip Baker Hall. I don't want to undersell him here because he could have arguably also gotten the Best Supporting Actor nomination in this. He's pretty amazing.
He always just seems so angry and so tired. Like, I feel like having a conversation with him in like real life, he would just be like exasperated. It's kind of how I would describe him.
I went to high school with his grandson.
How was he? Exasperated?
I didn't know him well, but even then, like at that age, like Philip Baker Hall, like that's awesome. Yeah, R.I.P.
Character actor.
Philip Baker Hall definitely seems like someone who talked about like cancel culture a lot, you know, even before it was like the zeitgeist.
He was just the amount of movies he was in, and like his role in Seinfeld.
Oh my god, he's so good in Seinfeld. So
good.
Lieutenant Bookman.
Oh my god, Lieutenant Bookman.
Another big character actor also kind of could be in contention heavyweight for best character actor of all time. Margot Martindale.
You mean character actress Margot Martindale?
Yeah, she's up there. Yeah. Surprised she wasn't in this movie. It's like a secretary or something.
Every time Margot Martindale shows up, you're just like, what? There she is. It's like for no more or no less than like 5 to 10 minutes. You know who's actually a great character actor that shows up in this too? Roger Bart as the hotel manager when he has to basically play the conduit from Pacino to Crowe at the end. And he's like, he says,
on the fucking phone.
Yeah.
F yourself.
Put him on the fucking phone.
And his fear in his eyes, this is like, if you catch this on the rewatch, the fear struck into Roger Bart's eyes as Russell Crowe lunges at him, like, to the door. Like, I think that's like a genuine bit of acting over there. He's like, I'm going to die by the hands of Russell Crowe.
He saw the Maximus eyes.
Yeah, I will never play Doc Brown in the Back to the Future Broadway show in 20 years.
I was going to say, he's also a singer, right?
Young Frankenstein on Broadway, one of the best productions I'd ever seen. Roger Bart was in that. He is a great Broadway actor. Shouts out, Roger Bart. We love you. We love Hostel Part 2.
He is the singing voice of which character in a animated Disney film?
Hercules, I'm going to go with.
Yeah.
I'm on fire. Listeners, I just fist pumped so hard, my shoulder like fell out of its socket.
That was impressive as like a Steph Curry 3 from the half point line. Just like
Swish,
instantaneous.
Baby. Swish, baby. No movement in that elbow. Yeah, did you run through every actor in this movie? Close.
Pretty much. I mean, there's also Pepsi Girl, but there's nothing really to talk about there.
Little Eisenberg?
Yeah.
I feel like this is an easy movie to sell to an actor, not the general public. Like,
yeah.
Totally just not kind of crossing there.
Maybe the listeners have tuned out at this point. It's just us rambling about our love for all these actors, but that's the bread and butter of this movie. And the next reason, which is the writing.
Mm-hmm.
This has some of my favorite dialogue from any movie. It's not the most quotable movie, and yet when you're hearing and seeing the dialogue delivered on screen, you just have the feeling that, like, once again, how did this not win a screenplay award? I couldn't tell you.
Honestly, Eric Roth has given us so many great screenplays, even now to this day, too. How this doesn't get screenplay? What got nominated over that, too? I'm trying to pull up...
well, this got nominated, but...
Oh, it did get nominated. Sorry.
I think it lost to the Cider House Rules.
Oh, God.
Which, by the way, that is... Michael Caine won Best Supporting Actor for the Cider House Rules.
Absolute travesty, honestly.
And look, I love Michael Caine. He's a great actor, but like that's embarrassing.
No. Haley Joel Osment, robbed.
Yeah, great performance. Michael Clark Duncan in The Insider, awesome. Tom Cruise in Magnolia, awesome.
Okay.
Jude Law in Talented Mr. Ripley, definitely a better performance than Michael Caine.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, screenplay, I'm like looking at it. I mean, personally, Election was probably my favorite out of that year, but I'm okay with Cider House Rules on screenplay.
Over this?
No, not over this. I'm just saying, compared to Best Supporting Actor, I'm just saying, if I had to give that movie one, gun to my head, give it one Academy Award.
If you had to give this movie one Oscar, who would it go to? Plummer?
Yeah, Plummer, who didn't even get nominated.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, Plummer, Crowe,
Pacino,
and any three of them.
They deserved
honestly.
it.
Yeah.
Even director. Van directs the hell out of this, too.
Again, nothing against Sam Mendes. I like him.
We love Sam Mendes, but we don't have to like American Beauty.
We don't.
No, we don't. But yes, the screenplay cannot be more airtight, too. And Anton, you kind of brought this up before. Like, it's 2.5 hours, but you never feel the runtime. At least I didn't. Like, to answer the question of this podcast, why wasn't it better? It wasn't better because it wasn't 5 hours long.
I wouldn't have minded if it was longer.
Nah, I'd be fine with it. Like, it did not drag in any pace, like, places. Like, yes, camera shots linger here and there, but, like, the pacing does not lag.
Yeah, camera shots may linger, but it takes some time to take in some art, right? Pacino just standing in the ocean.
God.
Crowe just staring at the golf, and he's like, fuck it, let's go to court.
Fuck it.
Russell Crowe, okay, why wasn't it better? Russell Crowe's golf swing was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the other guy who was definitely watching him, he's got a very clean stroke, I will say.
Yeah.
Like, that guy's probably a scratch golfer. Crowe maybe hits like 120 on the course.
He's allegedly, what does he say his handicap is? Like 7?
Yeah, he says 7. I'm like, you say that with as much confidence as you speak your Japanese in this film.
I mean, can you trust his character? He lied about being on the 94 Olympic judo team.
Oh, that's a great scene where he's trying to explain all this stuff over the phone. He's like, "No, I sparred with them." Like,
You see, he sounds like a guy who calls into like New York sports where he's like, "Look, Boomer and Gio, when I was 1994, I was sparring with the team." Oh, so you trained with the team? I just said I sparred with the team, and it's like, oh my God,
this film maybe needed a Mike Francesa cameo.
Okay, there is some great New York sports talk in this movie, though. I will say,
I think the Knicks are going to make the semifinals.
Also, come on, Michael Mann. Eastern Conference, semis or like Eastern Conference, like finals. Get it right. And also, Russell Crowe is wearing a great Jets pullover in this.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Very
if
good.
If the listeners can't tell, I'm a very big New York sports fan.
Jets or Giants?
Big Jets fan. My dad's from the Bronx. My mom's from Brooklyn. The Jets played at the Polo Grounds when he was a kid. So that's how we get Jets and Yankees and, Rangers and Knicks being in Manhattan.
Well, Garrett, just because you are such a big Jets fan, we're going to make sure to fly you out in our Why Wasn't It Better private jet for the Niners-Jets opening game.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you. But yes, the screenplay was great, to answer your original question, Pat.
I'm just going to read some dialogue here when they're in the Japanese restaurant. I can't not read it. It's fantastic. Weigan says, I have to put my family's welfare on the line, my friend. And what are you putting up? You're putting up words. And Bergman says, words? Why, you been dicking around at some fucking company golf tournament. I've been out in the world giving my word and backing it up with action.
Boom.
Laying the hammer down.
You already mentioned McGill's monologue in the courtroom. Boy, you got rights and lefts and ups and downs and middles. So good.
So good.
Gosh, that's like such a great line. I'm like, wow, he's really going all 4 quadrants on this.
Wings Hauser just has this shit-eating grin on his face.
Do you think that was like an actual smirk in real life? Because he was like kind of giggling at the dialogue, and then McGill just like stayed in character to go, wipe that smirk off your face.
I have a feeling Mann probably told McGill, like, just act it however you want. And McGill was like, you got it, buddy. I got this.
100 miles per hour, you say?
Yeah.
I got you.
You said dial it up to 15?
Oh my God. Dr. Weigan's deposition will be a part of this record, and I'm going to take my witness's testimony whether the hell you like it or not.
What's your favorite scene, both of you?
I think the courtroom scene is probably the most engaging scene and really kind of feels like when the movie starts to gain momentum to its plot. And just Bruce McGill, honestly, like you said, like just steals the movie right there, like up until that point. So I'm going to probably go with that scene.
I think for me, it has to be Pacino when he realizes that Mike Wallace went with the corporate heads in terms of the decision.
And he just walks out.
Because everything leading up to that was just incredible.
I agree with you, Anton. I think for me, it's that scene and basically a continuation of that scene. It's the same characters in the same room. I can't remember if it's in the first scene or the second scene when he finds the SEC filing about the sale and he calls them all out on it. And Philip Baker Saul was like, oh, I heard rumors, like acting like he doesn't know that it's happening. He's like, it's not a rumor, it's a sale.
Yeah, I love how Lowell Bergman apparently is the only one who knows that CBS is up for sale.
He's like, are you implying that Eric and the others are influenced by money? He's like, oh no, they work for free.
Such a good line. It's to your point. It's not funny dialogue, but the actors kind of like find almost like the biting humor in that.
So it's either that scene or when Russell Crowe speaks a lot of Japanese and then said he ordered tempura.
You get the unnecessary camera flips. It's just switching from them on either side. It's like it's so unnecessary, but like that's Michael Mann. That is
probably
Michael
did
Mann.
900 takes of Russell Crowe speaking Japanese where he has no idea what he's talking about.
Any scene, like I can't tell you how many times I rewatched this on YouTube where all the scenes where Pacino just flips out. What is he? He's just going off on Philip Baker Hall, and he ends it, and he's like, "The cat totally out of the bag, and you're still sitting here debating."
But you know what? There's like, for all like the fun Pacino yelling, there's like some really great like measured dialogue that he has when he's talking with, Russell Crowe in that one scene, kind of like almost checking in on his life. Like, hey, how's your life going? He's like, pretty awful. He talks about becoming the teacher at the school, and Pacino has a great line. Does it make you feel good putting what you know to use? And I think that is just such a great quote, like capturing a broader idea, like outside this movie, like kind of like that general like malaise and ennui and just like boredom people felt in the late 90s, like pre 9/11. American Beauty kind of minds this, and Fight Club too. But really a lot of that like corporate lackey, like existentialism, for lack of better phrases, is so much more profound too. Like a lot of Michael Mann's characters, especially the men in his film, all really kind of are characterized by like the big questions, like why do we live? Why do we love? Why do we work? So I do think it's like really interesting to kind of like that line like kind of breaks through to Crowe. He's like, you know what? This is actually kind of like bringing me joy, like putting what I know to like actual use and like trying to make a better difference in the world. So I know that wasn't a direct response to what you were saying, but it's just a line that stuck with me really well and a great scene.
No, I like it. And it highlights why this is such a masterful performance from Pacino, because you get the loud Pacino, but a lot of subtlety as well.
And that's why I think like Michael Mann just like gets Pacino. He's like, I know I can make him loud and like let him shine like that, but I can also kind of capture that like, internal monologue like so well. Like see how these characters are kind of like answering these big questions like for themselves too. And it's like I think Pacino asks Crowe that, but also is asking himself that too, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of just a defining characteristic for the characters.
Even at the very end, where he tells Mike Wallace, he's just like, Mike, I quit. That's it. There's nothing. He doesn't go big at all.
No. But then we get the slow-mo shot and the trench coat flip, baby.
It wouldn't be a Michael Mann movie without some questionable music choices.
You think weird. Michael Mann definitely did the sax himself?
That had to be a synth sax.
I think he attempted it.
Yeah.
I think he at least did.
Mike, I'm
He's
sorry.
He's like in the editing bay, and like the film's composer's like, "What you doing in there?"
You ever heard him interviewed?
Michael Mann.
Yeah, it's no sense of humor.
They're so fun. That's why I'm like, this guy is like such a sociopath in the best sense of the word.
He has a I would say George Lucas level of dryness.
Yeah, that's very fair to say.
It's actually pronounced Hoth.
It's actually pronounced Macaulay, not Macaulay.
Oh yeah, actually I worked in Chicago.
Yeah, imagine like actors on actors, like directors on directors, like the Man versus Lucas. I would be asleep in 10 minutes during that.
You go into a coma.
Yeah, the most interesting films talked about by the most like laconic filmmakers.
This made me kind of miss celluloid Michael Mann, because he's all digital now, and this film looks great. Shot by Dante Spinotti, who also shot Heat.
Dante, also Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah,
that's the third movie that I thought of when I thought of Dante Spinotti.
Or I think of Dante Spinotti. That's what I think of.
This got nominated for cinematography. I really like how it's filmed. There's a lot of like close-ups and handheld stuff. It's like pretty. Again, Mann's just a pretty unique visual filmmaker, and this is a great example of it.
Well, I think Spinotti, like honestly, and Mann too, like they're just great at like kind of shooting tension. Like I think handheld just in general is always a great way to just kind of introduce tension into any scenes too. And let's be honest, the scenes inside of the CBS's office or like the editing bays of 60 Minutes are some of just like the most like tense moments like throughout the film.
Yeah, I feel like the word suffocating comes to mind in a lot of those scenes.
Yes.
Yeah, you really feel the paranoia in some scenes.
Claustrophobic for sure. Dante Spinotti, he also works a lot with Brett Ratner, which I'm like, how'd you get from Mann to Ratner?
Yeah, he did shoot X-Men The Last Stand.
Oh, the best X-Men. Oopsie poops, yeah.
Why did I make that our season finale? I feel like I owe the listeners a better one than that.
No, because that is a great example of a movie that should have been a lot better, but wasn't. So
yeah. God, that movie sucked.
But this movie rules.
This movie, incredible.
Capital R rules.
I would say the only part of the visuals that didn't work for me is Wygant's meltdown in the hotel room, where you're just like, what is going on here?
Yeah, got a little trippy.
It does turn into Pink Floyd The Wall for like 2 minutes. You're like, this is...
That felt really out of place.
Yeah.
It doesn't work because there is no kind of like surrealism or even like, I'm sort of looking for like displayed existentialism or like introspection by like Wygant in this movie too. I always want to say Waingro because it's a damn Michael Mann film. Anyway, sorry.
Waingro would have been an interesting choice in this movie.
Quick digression. Did anyone watch John Mulaney's Everybody's in LA?
No,
Is this where he brings on Waingro?
Waingro does stand up as Waingro from Heat.
I had to get it on, man.
So I recommend to all the listeners, even if you don't watch it, if you love Michael Mann and love Waingro, watch the bit in John Mulaney's Everybody's in LA of that actor playing Waingro doing stand up as Waingro. But anyhow, back to Wygant. That introspection, I don't think works being shown as it does at the climax of the film too. I think those lingering shots of paranoia kind of fill in all the gaps that we as the viewer need to see. But again, that is my 2 cents.
No, I think we're all in agreement on this. It clashes with the rest of the film. There's nothing else in the film remotely like it.
No.
The trench coat flip slow motion scene to credits.
So that's one way to end the film. Yeah, I mean,
it's a way.
Look, Mann's soundtrack choices, it's not my cup of tea. I respect him for trying different things, but he does this in a lot of his films. Like, what is it in that scene in Collateral where it's just like, sure, there's just an Audio Slave song thrown in here.
Or in this film, just the culturally ambiguous chanting.
Well, we know that was a staple of that era.
Oh my God.
It's not as bad as Hulk, but...
From 1990, like 5 to 2003, Hollywood was obsessed with, hey, we're in the Middle East. You know what that means.
Or in the case of Hulk, it's like, this has nothing to do with the Middle East, but we're going to do it anyway.
But
Well, you bet your bottom dollar we're doing that.
But they brought back the Channing at the end of the film. I didn't get it. But you know what? Maybe I'm not supposed to. It goes deeper.
I don't think it's a you problem, to be honest.
Look, there's a lot of French blue dress shirts in this film, and I've been trying to bring them back for years, so I was very happy to see that here.
Yeah, one day.
Very common in the 90s, not so much now.
No.
Another thing, similar to All the President's Men, this was portraying events that had happened very recently at that period of time, which is kind of interesting. Because this is an example, like, imagine if you're a filmmaker and you were going to a studio and you're like, I want to make a movie about the Jeffrey Wigand, Brown and Williamson controversy that hit 60 Minutes in 1996. They probably wouldn't even know what that was, because I doubt many people even know what this is at this point. I didn't. If it wasn't for this film, I would have no idea what that was.
Nope.
Not as good of a film, nor as deep, but recently we had that film that was all about like the GameStop situation that had Pete, what is it? Who was
Dumb
it?
Money?
Yeah, Dumb Money.
Dumb Money, yes.
That only happened like 2 years ago.
Oh, see, I didn't even know Dumb Money was about that.
Yeah.
It is very interesting when you kind of have these movies come out literally while these situations are happening. Like Tiger King is actually a great example too. I know that's not a news story or anything, but they were making scripted content like right after the show had finished airing, or the documentary, I should say, had finished airing on Netflix too. And again, lost to like the sea of time. Like it's already dated. And I think movies, especially like this, like you risk becoming dated if the topic you're covering doesn't stay in the zeitgeist longer than the moment.
Yeah, like one of the reasons why I think The Big Short did so well is it was a good 7 or 8 years after the financial crisis. So we as a society had time to process it, as opposed to this. Nobody knew what this was to begin with. They're like, oh yeah, 60 Minutes.
Right. Cigarettes are bad. 60 Minutes. Yeah. Anything else? Not really broad appeal on that one.
Pacino summed it up like this, quote, "We all took liberties in telling the story to make it more dramatic, but we never tampered with the facts," end quote.
I think saying you take liberties means you tampered with the facts, Pacino. I'm busting balls.
Based on what we know, this is very accurate.
Of course. And I think, the producers and Michael Mann with like the end kind of title cards are basically like, we tried to tell the best story possible, but look, we have to make some of this interesting too. So like, bear with us.
Well, we talked about the runtime, the subject matter, the cast, the writing. Anything to add before we close this out?
Like I said before, but just kind of bring it home too. Like, I feel like Michael Mann is not great at writing female characters or giving female characters really any agency or things to do here. And I think this movie is probably his worst example of it. The women who are competent are villains, Gina Gershon. The women are just wives and are basically just seen as like vengeful or spiteful or mean or clueless, like Debbie Mazar, excuse me. So I'm just saying, I need like a Michael Mann, like Ocean style film for like his own personal redemption. But that's my personal pitch aside.
Maybe like a Michael Mann version of Showgirls?
Okay. If Paul Verhoeven, my goat, can't make a good movie out of Showgirls. No, I'm just kidding. I love Paul Verhoeven, but that man, oof, he's a fun guy.
It was a misfire.
Yeah. Hey, look, like I said, we all throw 100, but they can't all be strikes.
Well then, Garret, as the guest, would you like to go first and give your rating?
Sure. I think, Pat, you summed it up really well. It's not that the movie per se wasn't better, could have been better, but rather it's the perception, the marketing, and everything else surrounding the movie itself could have been a lot better. That being said, it's a very timely and prescient film, even still today. I think corporate interference in just against integrity, whether it's journalistic integrity or just ethics in general when it comes to like people's health and safety and what we as consumers actually do consume in a capitalist society, are just like very prevalent themes too. I think the increasing paranoia that we see throughout the film that Anton touched upon just really kind of heightens the overall tension and makes it feel so timely for the characters too, in addition to what we know in personal life. So all in all, it's a top movie. And we're even saying that about a 2.5 hour film. There's really no flaws to kind of poke in, at least my opinion, with the screenplay, the direction. Every actor across the board is just all gas, no brakes. And for me, honestly, this is just a straight A film.
I think this film has a lot of perfection in it. I think it has perfect acting. The writing's perfect. It's perfect drama. It's perfect tension, and it's all set to a very compelling story. I think if you want to pick nits, it's not a short movie. There's some strange melodrama that's in it. The score is a little too abstract for my taste, but that's what you're going to get in a Michael Mann film. This is one of my favorite films. I find it completely engrossing. I think it is a masterpiece. It is one of, if not the most underrated movies of the 1990s. Is it as satisfying as something like Heat? No, but I think it does deserve to be remembered as Michael Mann's other magnum opus. There is a reason that this is the film that got him all of his Oscar nominations. I will not call this a better film than Heat. Heat is a more entertaining film, but The Insider, I think, is Michael Mann's most important film because of its subject matter. This is an A+ for me. This is S tier. It is absolutely one of my favorite dramas of all time, and I don't have enough good things to say about it.
Very well done. This film is a masterclass in storytelling. It's absolutely underrated, and I feel like it's disappointing that I wasn't able to see it until up to this point. I feel like it really should be revisited or visited by folks today, just because this is an amazing example of just taking true life and being able to create art, being able to really take, fantastic cast, writing, screenplay, and just really put it on the screen in this medium that is very powerful. I think I don't mind the length at all, just because with each second and minute we get a fantastic performance from, of course, Russell Crowe and Al Pacino, and then this fantastic cast around them, which creates a perfect balance of how to tell a story that is compelling, moving forward, and really doesn't shy away from the complexity of its characters, of the story, that are not totally perfect characters by any means, but are sympathetic and flawed and just show the human experience. I feel like it, again, is just an underrated film, and I can't give this film anything else other than an A.
All right, well, that's it for The Insider. Garret, it's been a pleasure.
Hey, the pleasure's all on this side of the table. And you know what? I feel like we can negotiate and we can say whatever we want because this is a free, fair, and ethical podcast.
Yes, it is.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of Why Wasn't It Better? Anton, the season is just about over. We have one more film that we're going to be covering this season. The season finale is next week. It is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you live.
Wow, that was nice and inclusive.
What can the listeners expect as the title when they log into Spotify or YouTube?
Okay, we've been debating this for a while. It's going to be Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone because a majority of our listeners are in the United States. So
USA.
But as a Harry Potter fan, I just want to remind everyone the real title of the book and the film is The Philosopher's Stone. The title was changed only for America. Just putting it out there. Now he's a philosophizer. All right.
That's too funny.
Well,
you got me good.
We will see you next time on Why Wasn't It Better? Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to Why Wasn't It Better? If you've made it this far, it's safe to assume that you like what you hear. If you have not already done so, please hit that subscribe button and become a follower wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. If you really like what you hear, you can contribute to our podcast monetarily and sign up for our Patreon. So whether you're commuting, chilling at home, or embarking on a nostalgia-fueled movie adventure, make Why Wasn't It Better your go-to podcast companion.